I need a smooth operator.
Smooth operator.
We're talking about Carlos Sainz and his podium achievement in the Abu Dhabi season finale of the 2021 season.
Yeah, Ferrari really took off near the end of the season. I think it was after Zandvoort that Ferrari just kind of showed like, okay, enough playing around. McLaren made a mistake. We're just gonna finish off the rest of this year. Get a solid third place in the constructors.
You know, they at the beginning of the season, I had my doubts. I was like, man, Ferrari's still gonna end up like fifth, fourth. But they really came through towards the second half of the seasoning.
Yeah, no, I truly
Seasoning?
think seasoning. They're spicy. There's some spicy boys over
The
there, man.
chili of Carlos Sainz. You know, that's a weird statement to say because it's almost like I'm talking about his junk.
I did not associate that with his junk, but
We'll
I
move
see where
on.
your head's
Yeah,
at.
I'm gonna get my mind out the gutter. I maybe have a crush on Sainz. So what?
I don't judge you, man. I got the hat.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ferrari, man. You know, and it's true. After Zandvoort, if you look at the distinctions, there's a clear chart that shows once McLaren had a bad showing at Zandvoort, that Ferrari just race after race did better
Yeah.
over and over again. And I didn't want it to happen, but it happened.
So it was interesting kind of following along this season because they really were probably the most consistent team in terms of drivers being in similar performance. They were the most consistent team throughout, and I think a lot of people realized that this season that, you know, going into that 2022 season, they're going to be a very strong contender.
Yeah, they're always going to be in the back of somebody's mind. It's like they're not going to get fastest laps, at least this year talking about them. They're not getting fastest laps. They're not completely destroying everybody by 30 seconds. But they are solid. They're a top tier team. They can beat out the midfield pretty easily in terms of qualifying. You know, they have a reliable car, both of them. They have reliable-ish drivers for the most part. For this, if we're talking about the whole season, I'd say they're reliable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, first half they were, but yeah, I mean everything about them kind of came down to like, okay, you know, like we might not have the best race, but let's never have a really bad race, and they showed it. And
Yeah.
Sainz really showed up on that last one and had a solid outing, beating out some really strong contenders like Bottas and Perez.
And Lando as well.
And Lando, but yeah, you know, he was talking about his gearbox issues and how he
He got a
wouldn't shift
puncture apparently
gears.
too.
Yeah, he had to roll into the pits with a puncture. I remember seeing that, and I mean, it was bad luck on that race for him.
Yeah, I think
It
his
was
second
tough.
half of the season was unfortunately pretty rough.
Yeah,
He started off
McLaren can
super
be
strong.
summed up like that. His second half, it just was bad.
Bad, yeah. Except Monza. Monza was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool, but that's again, that's an outlier because somebody tried to crush Lewis Hamilton with a car. If you remember
He
that.
successfully crushed Lewis Hamilton with
Well,
the
you
car.
know, he's still standing.
So
He didn't lose any inches off his height.
and speaking of, you know, the title contenders, Max and Lewis, I felt like Ferrari was extremely overshadowed this whole season. Would you agree?
Yeah, you know, it's like all their title fights and all the great races they have were kind of like, oh, McLaren podiums, but what about Mercedes and Red Bull? It's like, you know, they're like, oh, congrats, but we want to see these guys race more.
Yeah.
You know, no matter how good they do, even I don't think they won two this year, but you know, even if they did like two, three races in a row, they'd still be like, yeah, but what about the title contenders? What about the big fight going on? You know, that's what brings in the views. But they, you know, they had a solid outing, especially on the Abu Dhabi. It was really fun to watch them. You know, they never show him on video racing. It's like maybe for a second or two, but he didn't make any big mistakes. We're talking about what is this? Not Leclerc, Carlos Sainz.
Carlos
We're talking
Sainz.
about Sainz. Sainz really didn't have any big mistakes. He drove a solid race.
Super solid race.
You know, even at the end, he defended really well. Didn't let anybody get around him for podium.
Yeah.
And
Imagine Yuki
he was quick.
Tsunoda podium though, if
Oh
Yuki
God,
would have gotten past him.
we wouldn't even be talking right now.
Leclerc unfortunately did pretty bad this race. He finished in P 10, but honestly, it's not as bad as McLaren did, which was a P7 and a P12 respectively for Norris and Ricciardo.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean that's not too far off from the drivers' standings. If we're talking about all the drivers, they really, talking about all the points totaled up, they really didn't do that great. Ricardo got eighth and Norris got sixth, with Ferraris in the middle, sandwiched in between them. And Ricardo was the one who was really dropped off between Leclerc and Ricardo, over 50 points difference.
Yeah.
Well, 40 points, over 40 points difference, but hey, that's close enough, right?
And if I'm not mistaken, I think Lando, Charles, and Sainz actually went into this race with very similar points. I think they were all within like 2 or 3 points of each other. So they were fighting for fifth in the Constructors' Championship, which I think is the second first place, right? Because obviously Red Bull and Mercedes in this area has been super dominant. So of course they're going to be top four. But then we've got our second first place, right? Which was anything after them. And that was Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, they're champions of the midfield. Ricky Bobby always say that's the first to lose, but champions of the midfield on races that are decided by tenths of a second, that's impressive.
Yeah, and teammates as well. I think Danny Rick, I'm a huge fan, huge Danny Rick fan. I
Huge.
think he unfortunately had a very messy, sloppy season. I think he showed what he's capable of and what he can do. But I think for as consistency's sake, I think he wasn't all there this season, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before, how desperate both McLaren drivers were getting near the end of the season. The last like 3 or 4 races, they were making crazy mistakes early on.
Yeah.
Getting punctures, going off track, losing positions in the start, just being desperate and trying to overtake the huge pack because they didn't get good qualifying.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that was a team strategy or if individually they were like, they woke up and said, "Oh, I'm gonna dive bomb turn one and see what happens."
Yeah.
I don't understand. This race for third could have been a lot closer constructors wise if they held on to their qualifying positions.
Yeah.
But it's like race after race, something always happens. Sometimes it's out of their control. More often than not, it's because they do something that just doesn't seem to make sense in my head. I know they're all race car drivers, they want to be aggressive, but in terms of like, okay, you want to have a good race, the race doesn't end on lap one. There's a lot of a lot of driving left to do, and it just makes my head hurt thinking about them sometimes. Where this whole season could have ended differently for them if they just stayed more consistent.
Yeah. If they
And I
didn't
don't think
fucking win
that's
it.
yeah, I don't think that's their fault necessarily. Again, I don't know the strategies behind what they wanted to do this season, but I don't think getting punctures turn one and diving to the outside and just having a bad second half of the season was in the plans.
Sliming into Botas at turn one in Mexico.
We won't talk about that one, but that was pretty bad too. I mean, Bottas played bowling, so everybody's at fault
Yeah,
sometimes.
it came around.
Yeah.
Do you think Leclerc should be worried about Carlos next year? So that was kind of the big conversation coming into the season. Will Carlos Sainz perform a lot better than Charles Leclerc? When you look at the charts, 164 compared to 159, I don't think he performed that much better than him, but he definitely had something to prove, right? He said, I scored more points than you throughout the whole season. Do you think Leclerc, who is currently Ferrari's poster child, do you think he should maybe be worried about next season that maybe Sainz is going to adapt a lot faster to the new 2022 car than Leclerc, and maybe some of that direction for Ferrari is going to change?
It's so up in the air right now with 2022 because whenever you bring in rule changes, it can flip the grid or it can just spread out the field even more. If Sainz or Leclerc can figure it out before their teammate, they might not share that knowledge. I feel like it is going to be a very competitive seat next year. Ferrari is always a competitive seat. I don't think Leclerc should be worried. I think he should be focused and they should be ready for a fight. Because Sainz and Leclerc, they do not give up. They do not give each other space. They're both, in their head, number one drivers.
Yeah.
And Ferrari being a midfield team, they're kind of just like, okay, race each other, see what happens. They don't want to knock each other out, but Ferrari wants their teammates to push each other because that's what really needs to happen to win these positions.
Yeah, yeah.
I think Daniel Ricciardo should be worried.
Yeah,
They're talking about it.
I think if he doesn't perform well next season, they're gonna replace him.
Yeah.
I think they're not going to really give him too much of an opportunity. McLaren is not that team that gives you more than 2 years. Once you either prove yourself or you don't. And so I can easily see them moving on to one of their junior drivers, maybe Pato Award, the Mexican driver that's an IndyCar, almost won the championship this year, by the way. He's doing testing currently. So I think there's a possible chance that if Ricciardo doesn't do well, they sign Award, mid-season.
Man, look at you following Mexican drivers in IndyCar. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think we want to cover some more. I would like to cover some more racing. Formula One is only from, one season. And so it would be good to get a variety of content.
Is this where we start going around the world for the World Rally Car Championship?
Absolutely. We'll see you in Finland.
Yeah. Oh, God. Could you imagine getting hit by a fucking Ford Focus going 200 miles an hour?
No, that would be sloppy.
Yeah. It would make great video, though.
So thanks again for tuning in. We just really wanted to talk about kind of how this season ended for Ferrari, how it ended for McLaren, and just how great and consistent Carlos Sainz and how deserving of that 5th position he was.
Can we still have a moment of silence for my boy Tsunoda? 14th in the driver's standings.
Wow.
If he didn't hit P4, he would have been behind Raikkonen, probably behind Latifi too. So big ups to my boy Tsunoda.
Big up to you, then. Let's go, Tsunoda.
Let's go, Tsunoda. Next year. I don't know why I'm such a fanboy. I think it's because I love his last name.
Yeah, Tsunoda's awesome.
Next year, baby, 2022, the whole grid could be wild. I'm excited to see it.
Awesome. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you.